betrayed at the altar, crowned in the boardroom, a true billionaire story. If you have not already, please hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell. This way, you will be the first to know when new stories are posted from Sonia Welch. Now, enjoy the story. Sasha grew up wrapped in the warmth of her mother Catherine's care. Catherine, a stay-at-home mom, was her daughter's constant presence, nurturing, guiding, and shaping her into a thoughtful young girl. Still, Sasha was what everyone in the family called a daddy's girl. She adored her father, Paul. Every evening, Sasha would wait for the sound of his footsteps at the door. The moment he walked in from work, she would sprint across the room, clutch his leg with a giggle, and leap into his arms. Paul always caught her with ease, holding her close and giving her the kind of hug that made her feel safe and loved. Paul was not a wealthy man, but he was hardworking, loyal, and steady. He was the head janitor for one of the wealthiest men in Georgia, John Fletcher Jr., heir to the massive Fletcher fortune. That fortune had begun with John's father, Fletcher Sr., who had once owned nothing but ambition. Years ago, Fletcher Sr. opened a small general store in Jonesboro, Georgia. It was modest at first but quickly successful. One store became 2, then 3. Soon the Fletcher name was stamped across towns in Georgia, then across the country. The small shop had grown into a national chain, a retail empire. While Fletcher Sr. became wealthy, Paul's family built their lives in the shadows of that empire. Paul's father, Chris, had worked for Fletcher Sr. as the janitor of the company's corporate office from a young age until the day he died. When Paul finished high school, Chris asked Fletcher Sr. if he might give his son a job. Fletcher Sr., known for his bluntness, said, "I don't handle those small matters. You're in charge of the cleaning staff. If you want to hire him, hire him. Just keep this place spotless." And so Paul joined his father as part of the janitorial team. When Chris passed away, Paul naturally stepped into his shoes and became the head of staff. Like his father before him, he worked loyally for the Fletchers his entire life. When Paul died, Sasha was 19 going on 20. His death shattered her. The man who had been her anchor was gone, and she couldn't bear to see her mother struggling to keep them afloat. Determined to help, Sasha took a job, ironically, in the very household her father had served. She became a housekeeper in the Fletcher mansion. By then, John Fletcher Jr. had passed away, leaving his fortune and the empire to his only son, John Fletcher III. John was only 20, around the same age as Sasha. Unlike his grandfather, or even his father, John had no interest in the business. He loved the lifestyle, the money, the cars, the travel, the parties, but not the responsibility. Sasha and John had known of each other since childhood, though they moved in worlds that never truly touched. She had seen him in passing during company picnics, or at Christmas events the Fletcher family hosted for employees' children. John was always dressed sharply, surrounded by laughter, never lifting a finger. To Sasha, he was the embodiment of privilege, spoiled, reckless, shallow. When Fletcher Jr. died and John inherited the empire, something about him seemed different. His usual cocky smirk was replaced with a kind of vulnerability, or at least that's how Sasha read it. For the first time, he sought her out, lingering in the kitchens or hallways while she worked. "Do you ever get tired of this?" he asked one afternoon, leaning casually against the doorframe while she polished silver. Sasha frowned. Of what? Serving other people, doing all the hard work so someone else can take the credit. His words startled her. He had never spoken with such awareness before. She shrugged. "It's a job. My family's always worked hard. That's how we live." He studied her with uncharacteristic seriousness. "You deserve more, Sasha." From that moment, John pursued her. He sent flowers to her mother's doorstep, lavish bouquets of roses so large they barely fit through the door. He slipped her small notes on the counter she cleaned, scribbled with lines like, "You're too beautiful to be invisible." Sasha ignored him at first. She told herself he was playing games, that rich boys like him didn't see girls like her as equals. But John was relentless. He showed up at the diner where she sometimes grabbed lunch on her breaks, sliding into the booth across from her with that grin she couldn't quite resist. "I'm not interested," she warned. "Then let me prove I'm worth your interest," he replied smoothly. Slowly, her guard began to slip. He took her on long drives in his convertible, blasting old R&B music he knew she loved because he had asked her mother what she grew up listening to. He surprised her with picnics, not catered meals, but baskets he claimed to have. Packed himself, with sandwiches slightly uneven and fruit not quite cut right. She laughed at his clumsy attempts, convinced it meant sincerity. And when he looked at her, really looked, she felt like the only woman in the world. Against her better judgment, Sasha let him in. What began as hesitation blossomed into romance. They would sneak away to quiet spots, parks, hidden corners of the Fletcher estate, where they shared stories about their lives. Sasha told him about her father, about the sound of his footsteps at the door, about the emptiness she felt after his death. John listened intently, even holding her when she cried. John told her about the crushing weight of his father's expectations, how he felt like he could never measure up. Whether it was truth or performance, Sasha believed him. She saw not a spoiled heir, but a man longing for understanding. One evening, while they sat beneath the stars, John brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're the only person who sees me, Sasha. Everyone else sees the money, but you see me." Her heart melted. For the first time, she thought maybe the distance between their worlds could be bridged by love. When John proposed only months later, Sasha was stunned. He arranged it on the balcony of the mansion, candles lit and music drifting softly from the open windows. He knelt with a ring that sparkled like a crown and said, "Marry me, Sasha. Be the one thing in my life that's real." She gasped, overwhelmed. It was sudden, but her heart was swept away. She loved him. Her mother, Catherine, however, remained unmoved. "Baby, those people will never let you into their world," she warned, her voice heavy with the weight of history. "They'll use you, then break you." But Sasha, blinded by hope, followed her heart. She believed John's love was genuine. She believed she had found a man who saw beyond class, race, and circumstance. Her happiness dimmed when John's attorney handed her a prenuptial agreement. She didn't understand. "Why?" "We're in love," she protested. John insisted it was standard. His lawyer said, "Everyone signs one." John reassured her that nothing would ever come between them. Reluctantly, Sasha signed, convinced their love was strong enough to weather anything. Their wedding was small and intimate, just John, his mother Sarah, Sasha, and Catherine. Catherine couldn't understand why a billionaire would insist on such a tiny affair, but Sasha believed John's explanation. He wanted it to be about them, not the world. After the wedding, Sasha moved into the Fletcher mansion, but instead of stepping into the role of wife, she found herself still in the role of maid. When she asked John who he would hire to take over her duties, he laughed. "Why would we hire someone? You know the job better than anyone." Sasha was hurt. She had thought marriage would elevate her, but instead, it had chained her back to servitude. Her mother was furious when she found out, but John brushed off her anger with excuses that only made sense to him. Life inside the Fletcher mansion quickly became unbearable for Sasha. John's charm had vanished the moment the wedding rings slid onto their fingers. He no longer courted her, no longer even spoke to her with affection. Instead, he barked orders as though she were still hired help. "Where's my dinner?" he'd demand, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. If it wasn't ready exactly when he wanted, he would sneer. "Figures. You were always better with a mop than a stove." Some nights, he would host parties in the mansion, parading women through their home like trophies. Sasha was forced to serve them food, refill their glasses, and clean up their mess while John draped his arm around someone else's waist. The humiliation burned in her chest, but she swallowed it in silence. Worse still, John would belittle her dreams. Whenever she mentioned wanting to go back to school, he would laugh. "School? You're a Fletcher now. Just stick to what you're good at. Scrubbing floors." Every insult chipped away at her until she began to doubt her own worth. In the dark hours of night, Sasha would curl up in the massive bed, feeling smaller than she ever had. Her heart whispered that this wasn't love, but her mind clung to the memory of the man who once chased her so passionately. She pushed those feelings down and told herself, "This too shall pass." John's father's office had always been off limits. Every pen, every paper was left exactly as it had been on the day he died. But one day, while cleaning, Sasha decided enough was enough. She stepped into the office and began tidying the desk. That's when she found it, a folded note with her name written on it. It was a letter to Fletcher Jr.'s attorney, detailing the contents of his will. What Sasha read changed everything. According to the letter, on his deathbed, Fletcher Sr. had confessed something shocking. The idea for the general store, the foundation of the Fletcher empire, had not been his at all. It had been Chris's, Sasha's grandfather. Chris had drawn up the entire plan, but with no money to fund it, he had shared it with his friend Fletcher Sr., hoping for help. Instead, Fletcher Sr. had stolen the idea and built his empire on it. Though Chris had eventually forgiven him, Fletcher Sr. had known the truth, and his son Fletcher Jr. had honored it. In his will, Fletcher Jr. wrote that because his own son was irresponsible. He wanted the fortune and the company to go to Paul's heir, Sasha. Billions of dollars and control of the empire were meant for her. John, meanwhile, was to be cut off. He would inherit nothing but the responsibility to learn to stand on his own. Even his mother Sarah was forbidden from bailing him out. Sasha was stunned. She shared the letter only with her mother. Catherine immediately sought help from a young attorney she remembered from church. Together, they confirmed the truth. Fletcher Jr.'s will indeed named Sasha as heir. But there was a problem. Buried inside the prenuptial agreement Sasha had signed was a clause, granting John full control over her assets, including the business. She had signed it blindly, never realizing what it meant. The realization made her sick. Still, the lawyer reassured her. If you signed under false pretenses, without knowledge of the will, we can fight this. Months passed. John's behavior worsened. He paraded girlfriends through the mansion, forcing Sasha to serve them meals and clean up after them. He mocked her, belittled her, and treated her with contempt. It became clear that the only reason he had married her was to secure the fortune he knew was never truly his. Finally, the lawyer called Sasha and Catherine into his office. They expected just an update. Instead, they received the news that changed everything. The prenup was void. Sasha had signed under deception, and John's lawyer would likely be disbarred. John would be forced to leave the mansion and stripped of access to the money. The empire built on her grandfather's ideas would at last return to its rightful heir, Sasha. When Sasha heard the words, "The prenup is void," she could hardly breathe. For months, she had carried the weight of humiliation, abuse, and doubt. Now, sitting in that quiet law office beside her mother, she felt the ground finally shift back beneath her feet. Her mother Catherine gripped her hand tightly, eyes brimming with tears. "I told you, baby. God don't sleep. He's been watching this whole time." The lawyer leaned forward. "Sasha, this will not be easy. John is going to fight. He's entitled, spoiled, and he believes this empire belongs to him. But the truth is on your side. When this goes to court, you will win." News broke quickly. One morning, John returned to the mansion to find his mother, Sarah Fletcher, and their family attorney waiting in the grand foyer. Sarah's face was drawn, disappointment etched deep into her features. "John," she said softly, "we need to talk." He laughed, tossing his keys onto the marble table. "What now, mother? Another lecture about how I need to grow up?" "This isn't about me," she replied, her voice sharp. "It's about you and what you've done to Sasha. The lawyers have uncovered everything. The prenup, the will, the deception." John's smug grin faltered. "That's ridiculous. Sasha's nothing without me. She's the maid, for God's sake. Do you really think father intended to hand billions to her?" Sarah's voice broke as she cut him off. "Your father trusted me to raise a man. Instead, I raised a parasite." "I'm ashamed, John." At that moment, Sasha stepped into the room. Her presence was quiet but commanding, no longer the timid girl who once cleaned these halls. "Your father left it all to me," she said firmly. "Every word is in his will. You never loved me. You used me, and now you've lost everything." John's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Sasha. You don't know how to run a business. You'll ruin everything." But Sasha didn't flinch. "Maybe, but at least I'll do it honestly. Something your family should have done generations ago." When the court officially transferred the empire to Sasha, John's fury was volcanic. He hurled words at her like stones, calling her a thief, a liar, an ungrateful maid who had tricked him. But none of his rage could undo what was written in his father's will. John laughed off the court ruling, telling everyone he knew it was just a mistake that would soon be overturned. But when the bank accounts froze and the luxury cars were repossessed, reality hit him like a storm. The so-called friends who once filled his mansion vanished. Party invitations dried up. Women who clung to him for the lavish lifestyle moved on to other rich men. John was left with nothing but his name, and even that had become a joke. He tried to start small ventures, nightclubs, investment schemes, even a flashy online brand. But without the Fletcher money backing him, everything failed. He wasn't built for work, he was built for indulgence. Weeks later, John showed up to the office to see Sasha. His once polished suits were wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. And this time he was humble. Security wouldn't allow him access, so he had to wait for her to come outside. As soon as she walked outside, he met her and fell to his knees. "Sasha, please, I need your help. I have nothing left. No one will talk to me. You're the only one who can save me." Sasha stared at him, memories flashing, him laughing with his mistresses as she served them, him sneering that she was better with a mop, him tricking her into signing away her rights. Her voice was calm but sharp as glass. "You tricked me, John. You humiliated me. You treated me like a servant in my own home. And now you want me to save you?" He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "No, John, you made your choices. Now you live with them." She turned and walked back inside, leaving him crumpled on the ground. For the first time, John Fletcher III had to face a world that would not bend for him. As part of the ruling, the mansion too became Sasha's. For weeks, Sasha walked the gilded halls, unsure what to do with a house so drenched in pain. Every corner echoed with John's cruelty. Then, one afternoon, Sarah Fletcher came to visit. She looked tired, smaller somehow, as if the truth about her son had weighed her down. "I failed him," she whispered. "I thought I raised him to value people, not just power." Sasha studied the older woman. Despite everything, Sarah had never treated her with malice. She had often looked at her son with quiet disappointment, as if she knew he was lost. In that moment, Sasha made a choice. "Mrs. Fletcher," she said softly, "this mansion doesn't hold good memories for me. But I know it does for you. It was your husband's pride and your son's childhood home. I want you to have it." Sarah's eyes widened. "Sasha, no, I couldn't." "Yes, you can," Sasha insisted. "I'm starting fresh, and this house is part of my past. You deserve to keep it." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she embraced her. For the first time, Sasha felt that she had truly closed the chapter on John. Soon after, she purchased her own estate just outside Atlanta. Modern, bright, filled with wide-open windows and sunlight. It was a house that belonged to her, and her alone. Stepping into the role of CEO was terrifying. Sasha had no formal training in business. The board of directors whispered behind her back, doubting that a young black woman could handle the empire. But Sasha carried the grit of her father, the intelligence of her grandfather, and the unshakable support of her mother. She started small, listening, learning, asking questions no one expected her to ask. Where was the money being wasted? Which communities had the Fletcher stores abandoned? How could the company return to serving people instead of just chasing profit? Slowly, she earned respect. Workers on the ground admired her humility. Customers began to see a new face of the Fletcher empire, one that looked like them, one that understood struggle, one that cared. And in quiet moments, Sasha would sit in her grandfather Chris's old rocking chair, whispering to the memory of the man who had dreamed it all into existence. "We got it back, Grandpa. It's ours now." The last piece of unfinished business lay in Fletcher Jr.'s office. For years, it had been a shrine. No one touched a paper, no one shifted a book. It was as though he might walk back in at any moment. Sasha remembered the suffocating feeling of stepping into that room the day she discovered the letter. Dust coated every surface, stale air clung to the curtains, and grief lingered like a shadow. But now it was hers. She hired a team to clean and renovate it. The walls were repainted in warm earth tones. The heavy drapes were pulled away, replaced by windows that let in sunlight. The desk, once buried in stacks of paper, was polished and neatly arranged with family photos. Her grandfather Chris, her father Paul, and Catherine smiling proudly. Where there had once been a monument to secrecy and stolen ideas, Sasha created a space of clarity and truth. It became her office, a symbol that the Fletcher empire had been reborn in honesty. Slowly, she began reshaping the company. Stores reopened in underserved areas. Wages were raised. Scholarships were offered in her father's name to children of janitors and custodians. The invisible workers who kept businesses alive but were never seen. Sasha became a symbol, not just of wealth, but of justice. The girl who once scrubbed the Fletcher floors was now signing million-dollar contracts in boardrooms. Still, power came with loneliness. Nights in her new mansion felt empty. Catherine, now proud beyond words, often reminded her, "Baby, money don't warm your bed. Love does." Sasha poured herself into work. The company was thriving under her leadership, but her nights remained quiet and lonely. Her mansion, once a symbol of everything she thought she wanted, felt too big for just one woman. She would sometimes wander the long hallways, pausing at the family portraits. She promised herself she would be different. "I won't let money make me hollow. I won't forget where I came from." Her mother, Catherine, noticed the weight Sasha carried. Over Sunday dinner, she would remind her, "Baby, healing ain't about money or mansions. It's about choosing joy again. Don't let what John did close your heart." Sasha listened, but trusting again felt impossible. That changed the night she attended a charity gala in Atlanta. The ballroom was filled with Georgia's most powerful names, but Sasha no longer felt intimidated. She walked in wearing a sleek black gown, her natural curls pinned high, carrying herself with the quiet confidence of a woman who had survived fire and come out gold. Across the room she spotted him, the young lawyer who had once sat across from her and Catherine in a cramped office, fighting for her truth. He wasn't flashy. No designer suit, no loud presence. Just a warm smile, steady eyes, and an ease that grounded her. "Miss Fletcher," he greeted her when they finally crossed paths. His voice was respectful, but there was a softness there too. "It's just Sasha," she replied, smiling for what felt like the first genuine time in months. They talked for hours that night, not about business or money, but about family, faith, dreams. He told her about his parents, small-town school teachers who taught him that helping people mattered more than chasing checks. She told him about Paul, about how she used to wait for his footsteps at the door. For the first time since her father's death, Sasha felt seen. Not as the heiress, not as the maid-turned-mogul, but as a woman. Their relationship grew slowly. He never pressured her, never dazzled her with expensive gifts or grand gestures. Instead, he gave her consistency. Late-night phone calls, long walks where she could finally breathe without the shadow of the Fletcher name. One evening, as they sat on her back porch overlooking the sprawling estate, Sasha admitted her fear. "I don't ever want to be fooled again. I thought John loved me, but I was just a pawn." He took her hand gently. "Sasha, you weren't the fool. He was. He couldn't see your worth, so he tried to own it. Love isn't ownership, it's partnership. And you deserve that." Tears stung her eyes. Catherine had been right all along. Healing wasn't about money or power. It was about opening her heart again. As months passed, Sasha blended her newfound love with her vision for the company. She rebranded it, no longer just Fletcher and Company, but with a new name honoring her grandfather, the Chris and Paul Foundation Stores. Each store carried not only products but also scholarships, health clinics, and programs for families who needed them. For the first time, the empire served the people it was built on, not just the elite. At the ribbon cutting of the first newly rebranded store, Sasha stood, with her mother on one side and the lawyer, her partner, on the other. Catherine squeezed her hand. "See, baby, you didn't just survive, you turned ashes into a crown." And as Sasha looked out over the crowd, children laughing, families smiling, employees clapping, she felt peace. Not just because she had reclaimed her family's stolen legacy, but because she had built something of her own. For the first time in a long time, Sasha believed in love, in joy, and in her future. Every evening when the sun set over her new home, Sasha no longer listened for footsteps that never came. Instead, she welcomed the steady presence of someone new, the lawyer who had stood by her side. Where John had torn her down, this man built her up. Where John had made her invisible, this man saw her fully. Sasha had not just inherited billions. She had inherited her family's rightful legacy. And this time, she would protect it with everything in her. Thank you for listening. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell this way. You will be the first to know when new stories are posted from Sonia Welch. And don't forget to hit the like button and share.